I'm
Should I
sorry,
just?
I muted myself.
It's okay.
Okay, so sorry, I guess I should speak first. So welcome. I'm Araceli and I am with Cage. We have three board members, and one of them is supposed to be here, John. He's not here yet, and Mark cannot be with us today. And we do have Norm with us and Bert, and I don't see any other Cage members yet. I know I had oh, Benny. Yes. Sorry, I didn't recognize you there, Benny. Who else? Any other Cage members here? I did send out a reminder. Usually I send out our meeting invites like the day before because that's what our group members are used to. But like I said, we don't have very many that are active. They just kind of keep up with the information we send out through email. And that's why I did want this recorded. So I'll send that out to them. Anyway, we're happy to have you guys here. We do have members that are interested in your organization and what you guys have done, because of course our group members are having to live with a label that just is not fair or right for them. And so we have quite a few that have shown interest in this, maybe not right away, but maybe in the long term are interested in hopefully being able to move and start a new life and have a free fair life instead of having to live under this I don't know what to call it, restrictive government that we have, unfair justice system that we have here. So welcome, River. And who else is presenting? Is it just you presenting, or are there multiple of you? Okay, and yes, we appreciate having you here. And does anybody have any questions before we get started? Okay, and if
That
you,
seems like quite a show up.
what was that, Bert?
It seemed like quite a show out today.
Yes, yeah.
Turnout.
Looking forward to this presentation. So, okay,
That's good.
if anybody has a question, you can raise your hand. Does everybody know how to do that? You can type it in the chat. You can type it in the chat as well. If you have a question or want us to show you how to raise your hand. Actually, I'm not sure I know how to raise my hand.
It's under reactions.
Okay, so
Yep.
under reactions,
And then it's like the second button you can click up from the bottom. Just shows raise hand like that.
got it.
Yep.
Or we could do a thumbs up or clap. I got it.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so we can get started. Norm raised his hand. Norm, you have a question?
I just wanted to ask if we'd be talking at all about citizenship via parentage or heritage, because I'm looking at that right now too. Maybe River or somebody will have something to say about that. And certainly, I'll wait for the Q&A on that.
Yeah, well, what I'd like to do or what I have planned is to run through a presentation for a few minutes so that we get a chance to explain who we are, what we're doing, why we're doing it, and then open it up to questions. And I'm willing to answer virtually any question. So it's all good. If I can answer it, I'll answer it, but only if I am confident in the answer and know what I'm talking about. If I don't, I will defer to some of the other folks from our organization who are here tonight. And if they're not certain, then we will defer until we can get an answer. It's extremely important to us to have correct answers because we understand that people are basing life decisions on those answers. So we try to be very careful in how we answer. So if that works, I will give a few-minute presentation and then open it up to whoever would like to ask a question.
Can I
Will that
just
work?
say, sorry, I
Yes.
just wanted to say right quick for anybody that just came in, we are recording to let you know. And if you can change if you don't speak, then the camera's not focused on you and you can leave your camera off as well. So just to let you guys know, we are recording. Okay, you can start anytime.
Okay. First, I will say that my name is Stephen Whitsett. That's what you'll find on the internet. My family call me River. A lot of my close friends call me River. And when I clocked into this meeting today, I used my personal email address, so my private name popped up. Doesn't bother me in the slightest. You're welcome to refer to me either which way there is. So what I'm going to do, I had a presentation prepared, but if I'm not going to be able to host, I don't think that I can share my screen. Is that correct?
Oh, I can make them host as well, right? Or, oh,
I'm not the IIT, so I don't know.
I can allow for others to share their screen. Let
Okay,
me,
I just need to share the screen. That's all. Okay. The picture that you have before you is an actual photograph of the cell that I was in during my 3,651 days in maximum isolation. This is a death row cell at Florida State Prison. I did not have a death sentence, thankfully, but for those who might already know my story, I was in maximum isolation because I was considered a maximum escape risk, and Florida did not think that I was safe enough to put into general population. So I spent 10 years plus 1 day in max isolation. During my time in isolation, I took up Zen meditation, which gave me an opportunity to think about things in much more depth and with much more clarity than I normally would have, because as you can see, there's no window in the picture. And I had no access to television, no access to radio, no access to visits, no access to the telephone, so plenty of time to think. And it was during my time that I got a chance to think deeply that I realized that I was the problem in my life. My problems were my fault. I had put myself in that position, not the guards, not the prosecutor, not the judge. I did that. But the glory in that is that if I'm responsible for the million little decisions that got me onto death row or in an isolation cell, I had the ability to start making smarter, better decisions and get myself out because I did not want to be a statistic. I knew that one day I was going to have the opportunity to return to the free world and I was going to make the most of it. So, as embarrassing as this is a picture of me while I was in an isolation cell, back when I had hair, back when I was much younger, and wearing the traditional red jumpsuit, which made me a maximum security inmate. But again, it was during this time that I also, with the great support of my family, started studying law. And I earned my law degree in that isolation cell, became my own lawyer, represented myself, won my appeal, had the escape overturned, and ultimately got my freedom. But what's really, really important about that is after my release from confinement, I spent the last 6 years of my incarceration. It was a total of 22 years. I spent that time working in the law library of the prison, trying to understand what was really going on with the direction of sex offender laws in the United States, including the registry. And one of the things I heard over and over and over again was that sex offenders cannot get passports, that convicted felons cannot get passports. And I had to argue with people, you have to read the law the way it's written, not the way you want it written or the way you think it should be written, but what's actually written. And anybody who does not have drug trafficking charges, human trafficking charges, or terrorism is otherwise entitled to have a passport, whether you're on parole, probation, or otherwise, you're entitled. And so I went and got a passport after my release from prison. I had 2 years parole, and I did not like the way that things were moving along. I didn't like the direction that the laws were headed. And I felt that it was sort of like playing the Super Bowl. If I know this couldn't happen, but if my home team of the Miami Dolphins was playing in the Super Bowl and against the New England Patriots in Boston with Tom Brady as the quarterback, you already know we're not going to win. The refs are going to make sure that you cannot win. I'm not going to play a ball game on a field where the rules are stacked against me and I'm not going to get a fair referee. So pretty early on, I determined that with the remainder of my life, I wanted to try something different. But if I'm being completely honest, I wasn't exactly eager to just jump in an airplane and go. Then what happened, as all of you know, came the International Megan's Law. And even though I had a passport, I would have had to turn my passport in and get the new passport, which says exactly what you see here. And my concern at the time, now this is 8 years ago, My concern at the time was that other countries would read this in my passport and not let me in. So if I can say it another way, I felt like if I didn't get the use of my passport without this written on it and get out of the country, then I ran the risk of never being able to get out of the country. And so, with the help of some friends, I boarded a plane roughly 2 weeks after my parole ended. I boarded a plane and escaped to Oslo, Norway. And I stayed in Norway a little bit. Then I moved into Denmark a little bit. And then I went into Germany to talk to the federal police, which I'll share in just a second. But to completely dispel this idea that convicted felons cannot get passports, I will tell you that I have used that passport to visit Austria. Those are the Austrian Alps in the background. I have visited Norway. This is actually inside the Arctic Circle of Norway. I have visited Denmark. Behind me is the castle, by the way. If you're familiar with Shakespeare's Hamlet, this is the castle where the story of Hamlet took place. I've been there, been inside of it. I've been to the island of Crete in Greece to visit a palace that's roughly 3,000 years old. I have been to the Czech Republic. Funny story about this. My buddy Gus, who traveled with me, we were making a video for our channel proving that you could walk across the borders in Europe without having to present a passport. And I literally was doing cartwheels over the border from Austria into the Czech Republic. But at 53 years old, I really didn't look good doing it. So thankfully, we didn't publish that video because it was not pretty. So when I got to Germany, I ultimately presented myself to the Bundeskriminalamt, which is the German version of the FBI. They came and interviewed me for roughly 8 hours, and they looked in depth at my criminal history. They offered me the chance to explain what I was doing and why I was trying to do it. And I effectively said to them that I didn't believe that living on the registry in the United States was legal. I didn't believe under international law it was legal. I also argued that I believed that my human rights had been violated when I was held past my prison sentence, my original prison sentence, under a involuntary civil commitment law, which many of you may already be familiar with that, where they can keep you beyond your prison sentence. Under international law, these involuntary civil commitment laws have already been determined to be human rights violations. So I really did expect to be kicked out of Germany. If I'm being honest, I did not think they would let me stay. On the contrary, after the German FBI, called the Bundeskriminalamt, had reviewed my case, they actually shook my hand, welcomed me to Germany, and one of them even said he was sorry that I had been born in the wrong country. Thereafter, now I had to go through some red tape, but thereafter the German government granted me protection against the United States, and I became a guest of the German government. 5 years later, I was granted permanent residence, as several of the folks in my group right now, they're on the verge of getting permanent residence, which applies to anyone who has worked 5 years in Germany. If you have worked and contributed to the tax base, you are entitled to permanent residence. And they didn't give a damn about my criminal history. That's a whole different story that if someone's interested, I'll explain how that works. But Germany doesn't get hung up on your criminal history unless there's really a reason to. Once I was granted residence in Germany, I joined a flying club, and it's because of the flying club, which, why did the picture disappear?
Yep, load.
Oh, it loaded. Since I have been in Germany, I have obtained a glider pilot license, a motor plane license, an aviation controller license, and recently I obtained a high-speed passenger train driver license. These are things that absolutely could not happen had I stayed in the United States. I will tell you that for my airplane licenses, the two first ones, I had to pass a background check. During the background check, I told them exactly what my history was, and they still granted the licenses to me. When I was hired by the train service to be a high-speed passenger, I'm not exactly sure how that translates into English, but when I became a high-speed rail passenger driver, I also had to pass a background check, but before I even did that, I voluntarily informed the company of my criminal history because I didn't want it to be a surprise. I didn't want it 3, 4, 5 years later for them to find out and then I had a problem. So I told them in the beginning, and they hired me anyways. So there is that. So after I got my licenses, or not after, but during that process, I started our video channel. I published my first YouTube video. It was really meant as nothing more than a middle finger to the United States. If I'm being honest, that's what it was. I was no longer going to be a prisoner of the United States, so I gave them the goodbye. Interestingly, what you see behind me in this video picture is the palace in Karlsruhe, which is a city that sits on the German-French border. What I did not know at the time is directly in front of me or behind the camera stands the German Supreme Court. Right there. I'm literally standing at the gate and did not realize it. Years later, I would stand in front of that court, in front of the judges, and argue why it was that I felt I was entitled to stay in Germany under protection. And the German Supreme Court granted my case. I won and declared that, at least for me, the American government was a threat. So there's that story. Eventually, I got a job with Kentucky Fried Chicken. I was hired as a shift manager in the city of Stuttgart. They knew my criminal history. I had to pass a background check. Nonetheless, I think someone's mic is open again and I'm getting feedback. Despite my criminal history, I was promoted 3 times, all the way to general manager, and half promoted, let's say a 4th time, to where I actually had responsibility for more than just my store. And I need to point out that what is often passes for a criminal offense in the United States, specifically a sex offense, is not necessarily a sex offense in Europe. So you would think that the Germans might be upset that, folks in the cage group have been convicted, for soliciting minors for sexual contact in online stings. Germany doesn't give a damn about it because Germany does not recognize that as a crime. It is a different world over here. I've told you that I'm in a flying club. Every single pilot in my club, including the teenage student pilots, all know exactly what my history is. I have not been kicked out, as you can see. It's just, again, it's a different world. At one point, when I was developing this organization, there was a time when I really got stressed out because I was trying to help too many people and got too in-depth involved, and I wasn't really sure what direction we were taking. I got overwhelmed and had to step back from the group. So I took a vacation of about 10 days and went to the Arctic Circle. What you see here on screen is a photograph that I took on an island south of the city of Tromsø, which the mountains in the back, immediately on the other side is the Arctic Ocean. This picture was taken in June when it was 0 degrees Celsius, so 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Cold, rainy, wet, the way I love it. But it was actually on this beach, on this spot, where everything kind of fit in my head together neatly. And I finally figured out what we need to be doing and how we need to do it. When I came back to Stuttgart is when our organization really got moving in a direction that I believed in, which I'll come to in just a second. Since then, we have started meeting as a group. What you see here is some of the board members of our organization standing in front of the Bundestag, or the German parliament. So this would be like the US Capitol building. We went here to celebrate New Year's 2026. Every person in that group, except for the female, is a convicted felon in the United States. Every person in that photograph, except for the woman, is a registered sex offender in the United States. You can see they all made it into Germany. They all live in Germany. They all work in Germany, and we have freedom of movement here. Now, I talk about Germany. Germany is not the only country we deal with. It's not the only country we now have folks living in, but it is the country I live in, so I mostly talk about this one. Fun fact, If you look at the tower on your right-hand side, in the distance behind it, you will see the roof of a building, a flat roof of the building. That happens to be the American Embassy. So some of our board members stood in front of that American Embassy and shared their feelings. I'm very proud of these men, by the way. Both of these men are convicted felons, and both of them are on the registry. Both of them have left it behind, come to Germany and gotten jobs and are building their lives here. Both of them are married, by the way. Their wives are here. Well, excuse me, one wife is here, the other is on her way. So life is completely possible. Now, to talk about what we're doing here, I find the sex offender situation, regardless of what the particular conviction was for, is very, very similar to slavery. For those of you who have studied the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution, you can read in there that slavery was abolished for the folks who were living in the South. However, the 13th Amendment specifically allows for the enslavement of persons who have been convicted of crimes. So the United States did not completely erase slavery or abolish it. So they have the right, the government has the right under the Constitution to make things even worse than they are now for sex offenders when they decide to do it. There's going to be no recourse. I believe with all my heart that there are two ways to handle this, and both are appropriate. One way to fight these sex offender laws, including the entrapment that Cage talks about, through the legislature, trying to get the laws changed, trying to get politicians to change their laws, trying to file lawsuits to block certain aspects of these investigations that are entrapment investigations, these things. That is important. However, I believe that it's going to take 20 or 30 years to actually get things changed. Given the current political makeup of the United States Supreme Court, I am concerned about the ability to get it changed. So just like for slavery, when politicians in the North were fighting in Congress to get slavery abolished and to get that changed, they knew that they were playing a long-term game, and that is absolutely necessary. However, I'm currently 54 years old. If I wait 20 or 30 years for those laws to be changed, for politicians to change their minds, for the culture in the United States to change, I will be dead. And that means that every single day of my life between now and when those laws changed are lost, and I cannot get them back. Maybe I'm selfish, maybe I'm impatient. I want my freedom now. And I believe the second prong to attacking slavery was equally valid. There were people who believed that the slaves were suffering today. They are on the plantations in the cotton fields today, and folks helped to get them out. They got the slaves out of the South and snuck them past the borders into the North to get them their freedom. We called that the Underground Railroad. I'm sure all of us studied that in high school, possibly college. And so as much as I believe it is necessary to challenge these laws in court, as necessary as it is to file suits based on human rights and civil rights violations, I also believe it is important to get people out now. Can everybody get out? Of course not. Does everybody have the means to get out? No, unfortunately not. But for those who can be saved, I think on our side, we have an obligation to do that. Having said that, and I'm almost finished talking, I promise. Having said that, it's not enough to just say people need to come over here. They need help in getting here. They need help finding jobs. They need help finding residences. Every person, in my opinion, that comes out of prison suffers from at least PTSD. They come out with mental health scars. Believe that with all my heart. In the United States, you're not going to get meaningful mental health treatment because in the United States, if you go for, I'm using a for instance, if you go and say, listen, I'm a pedophile and I need help doing this, that, and the other, under American law, they're required to report you. Anything you say to a therapist can end up in court and used against you. That's the way it is. In Europe, on the contrary, if someone were to say that they're a pedophile or a hebephile or a hebephile or whatever, a necrophile, if there is such a thing, your therapist doesn't have to report you. And you can honestly talk to people and you can honestly resolve issues because, again, what is considered a crime in the United States is not considered a crime in Europe. So if you go and say that I'm attracted to 16-year-olds, first of all, it's legal in Germany. Second of all, the therapists don't assume that you're mentally ill. They're going to address the PTSD. They're going to address the important issues. So I believe you're going to get better mental health counseling. Now, having said that, my organization has developed, our organization has developed a plan. And I would like to share that plan with you very briefly. As you know, I spent more than 10 years living in an isolation cell with a total of 22 years in prison in Florida. I've determined I want to live in a castle. And I'm serious. So what we've talked about doing is there are abandoned castles, monasteries, convents that are falling into disrepair in Europe that can be purchased relatively inexpensively. In fact, you might even be surprised how inexpensive it is. Thankfully, the government actually provides money for those renovations because they're historical sites. So it's not as though this is unreasonable. If we were to purchase a castle, we need to bring in folks to rebuild it, to renovate it. So what we would like to do is bring in folks, working it out with the local mayor and the local school. We will have folks come in here and get involved in a vocational school under German law. They will learn the German system for electricity, plumbing, what have you, and work on site renovating this castle, providing themselves with a place to live. Thankfully, the government's going to help pay for it. But in doing so, they receive work residences and residence visa. Excuse me, I'm twisting words. They can receive work and residence permits together. Those are the same thing in Germany. Those are not separate things. You cannot work in Germany if you don't reside here. You can't reside here if you don't work here. So the permits are actually come together. And we will make that arrangement to make that happen. The next step would be the vocational training to where they work with a local vocational school. The vocational school gets money from the government to do it. We get labor inexpensively to help renovate. And at the end of the day, these folks receive certificates recognized by the German government so that they can later go out and get jobs for themselves and earn a decent living. That is one of the primary goals, because I feel that the American system tries to rob people of their dignity. That is one of the worst things that they can do. They take away a person's belief in themselves and the belief that they can actually have a positive future. Because there are a lot of people, and I think this is probably particularly true in the cage group, you get one-time offenders who get caught up in something. These are not bad people. These are not people that can't be salvaged. They should be given every opportunity to rehabilitate and reintegrate into society and return to being meaningful citizens. These folks have a lot to contribute. Barring them from getting good employment, barring them from making healthy relationships, barring them from becoming integrated into the community is a disadvantage to the American system. On the contrary, Europe says, we want you here. We would prefer that you reintegrate. We would prefer that you get good jobs and pay into the tax base. It just helps everybody. And for that reason, I should point out briefly that Germany specifically does not release the names or photos of most people who are arrested for crimes or convicted of crimes, only in extreme cases or terrorism. And that's because they want people to be able to come out of prison and be able to get good jobs, move into the community, what have you. And they can't do that if their names and faces are all over the internet for whatever crime, because that doesn't disappear. Having said that, the next step is for these folks to get involved in language courses, because in order to integrate into any country in Europe, you really need to speak the language. You need to learn the culture, you need to speak the language. Anybody can, any American, Canadian, British person can come to Europe and get a job pretty easily. It's not all that difficult, even if you don't speak the language. but you're only going to get an entry-level job. If you want a decent job, if you want a job that's really going to take you somewhere, you've got to get into language school. So that is another aspect of what we would provide in the program. So maybe 2 times a week, there is an actual language class. During the week, you're using it during your vocational training. So learning language, learning a vocation. Then we get the mental health assistance that I mentioned a moment ago. We have therapists here that we've already talked to who are willing to assist in this mental health assistance, not to try to convince you that you're a pervert and that you can't be helped and that you're mentally ill. On the contrary, that you're suffering from PTSD, that you're suffering from these other issues that need to be corrected so that you can start to have belief in yourself again, so that you can so the dignity can return to you. That's what we want to see happen. We need to start believing in people and not just assume the worst in people, which is how I believe the American system is set up. And so finally, integration is the name of the game. We want these folks to live full, meaningful lives. You need to be able to pursue your dreams. If your dream is to learn to fly, you should be able to do it. It's possible. You want to learn to do a sailboat, you want to learn to play the piano, it doesn't matter. Whatever it is you want to do, it's possible here. It absolutely is possible here. And I believe that every offender who is truly interested in changing the direction of their lives, who truly want a law-abiding life, deserve every possible chance there is. And I'm telling you, here in Europe, it's possible. And if we can succeed here, we're going to take it as far as we can go. And that is why I personally believe, as well as our organization, in reaching out to groups like CAGE. We need to all start pulling together. Just like against slavery, when there were folks who were in the Congress trying to change the laws, they were trying to change the minds of politicians. That is necessary. That should happen. Lawsuits to block these crazy laws need to happen. What we're saying on the other side is we also have the ability to directly affect people's lives today. I understand it can't be everybody. I get it. But for as many as we can help, that's what we need to be trying to do. And so this castle, and this is all in just one example, this is what this castle looks like on the outside. This is the town it looks like, actual photograph. This is what freedom looks like. Having lived in Europe now almost 8 years, there is nothing you could give me, nothing you could promise me to get me to go back to the United States. I have my freedom. I love my freedom. And I want to make sure other people have the chance for the exact same thing. Understanding that people define freedom differently. So that's what we're doing. And we think it's crucial now that we reach out to other groups and we assist CAGE as much as possible. And hopefully CAGE can assist us, at least, as far as passing information or making ourselves available. But I think the time has come when we all need to be pulling together. And that, my friends, is the story. I am happy to take questions if you have any. Or I'm happy to sit here quietly if you don't have any.
Okay, we have ICAC Unpacked raise his hand. Or is that, or you're clapping, sorry. Norm, you didn't raise your hand, did you? That's Jeff.
Hey, good afternoon, folks. Jeff Corey here, slowly recovered sex addict as well as registered sex offender from Virginia. I love what you just shared, and I think it's a really good blueprint. The first question is, do you have a timeline when you think it's going to become a reality? And then in the process, do you think that we can actually export that to other countries, say Albania or Portugal? I'm half Lebanese, half Portuguese. My grandmother and my grandfather were both born in the Azores. I can actually try to get residency that way, but it doesn't matter. And me and my wife are both retired. So we're not going to be a drain on the resources. We're going to be an input into the economy.
Okay. Sounded like you had a couple questions at one time. The timeline is that we expect in the next 90 days to file for actual incorporation as a nonprofit in Germany. That is the plan. And after we incorporate, we will begin engaging the folks that we need to talk to about the actual evaluation of the property, speaking to a particular company who specializes in renovation projects. And as we narrow down which actual property we're interested in, it will then be on our agenda to go sit down with the mayor of in that particular town and start working out the details. I would envision us taking concrete steps forward by the end of 2026. Concrete steps forward. I have been to Portugal, by the way. Surprisingly beautiful country. Surprisingly beautiful. The people were ridiculously friendly. And we have folks in our organization in Portugal right now. We also, you asked if Germany was the only country. We have folks in Armenia, one of whom is here with us this evening, Jonathan down there with the Armenian flag. We have folks in various countries, and now I'm going blank. We've had some in Greece, we have some in Vietnam, we have some, I'm sure I'm missing some.
Albania.
I said Albania, didn't I? Oh, I said Armenia, excuse me. Albania, excuse me. They're
Understood.
similar enough. And I know that we have opportunities in Denmark, although the person who was going to move to Denmark had a change of plans. Now he's in prison for life. So well, that didn't work out. So yes, sir. I think, did I answer that? Okay. Glad to hear it.
France, Portugal, Italy. There's a lot
Oh,
of
that's right. Yep, France. Thank you. I mentioned Portugal, Italy.
Mhm.
So no, we're not limiting folks to Germany. You hear me mostly speak about Germany because, again, it's the country I live in. I spend most of my time here. So this is what I speak of most often, but we have people in other places and we have people preparing for other places.
Remember, there's a question in the text that says, has anyone in the organization or who has been aided by the organization been on federal supervision when they moved abroad? Or has been the experience been that anyone on supervision must complete it first?
Okay, it depends on what kind of supervision we're talking about. If we're talking about court-imposed supervision, we discourage anyone from trying to come over before then. If someone were to come over here while on active probation or parole, the chances of the American government asking for extradition are high. If you've completed court-imposed and you have only legislatively imposed, like lifelong supervision in Tennessee. We had someone on lifelong supervision to Tennessee who gave his 21-day notice under the IML, moved over here, and that has been, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. And the Americans didn't care. You'd be surprised how many states just don't care. They're glad to get rid of you. It's becoming my experience. So there's the difference between court imposed and legislatively imposed. I hope I answered the question.
What if we have some members that, what if they haven't been convicted, but their case is still open? Like we have some that it's been like 7, 8 years and they still haven't gone to trial. What if they're in a situation like that? They're not convicted, but they still have a pending case, but it's been like 8 years.
The first thing they'd have to do is make sure that there's not a court order as part of their pretrial release that they're not allowed to leave the country or that they have to surrender their passports. The way Germany looks at it, if someone has an actual case, meaning an actual victim, someone is charged with sexual assault of a 10-year-old or whatever, that active case, Germany doesn't want you here because you're fleeing from justice, is what it amounts to. If the case is inactive or dropped, or if we're talking about a procedural violation, failure to register, change of address, Germany doesn't give a damn about that. They don't want to hear about it, and they're not going to stop you from coming here, and they're not going to make you leave. So Germany very clearly divides those two things: active investigation versus a procedural violation. if a case is 8 years old and someone has not, you said they've not been charged?
They've been charged, but they just keep delaying it and postponing it, and there is no
8 years.
victim. This was the sting operation, so there
Why
is
are,
no victim.
without
they're
going into detail, can you tell me why they didn't file a demand for a speedy trial and have done with it?
I don't know. Does anybody else here with our group Cage know about that? I know we have at least two cases where it's
8
been like
years?
7 to 8 years, and they just keep delaying it because I mean the prosecution's just not willing to drop it because
Okay.
the,
In that
the
instance, what I would recommend before I would say just jump on a plane, go get permission from the court to leave.
yeah.
We've seen that granted. We have seen that granted. One of our guys who went to Ukraine immediately before the war, I mean, he got there like a month before the war broke out. He actually asked the court for permission to go, and the court said go.
Yeah,
And
I would
you've
think if
got good
it's been,
standing. I mean, 8 years later, Your Honor, dude,
yeah,
I can't put my life on hold for 8 years. Yeah, I think somebody would have a good chance of having that granted. I would ask first. Then
okay,
it would be, as I understand it, I have not seen this happen yet. But speaking with my lawyer here in Germany, somebody could fight extradition to the United States almost indefinitely. And if you told the German court, look, they had 8 years to prosecute me and didn't do anything with it, I'm not fleeing justice, I'm moving on with my life.
hmm
Germany is much more logic based than you would expect it to be.
yeah,
I know that,
especially
please.
when there's no victim. It's a sting operation, and they're just
Oh,
delaying it because they have to
oh,
find a yeah, they have to find a way
okay,
around, pretending like it wasn't entrapment. And so they just
okay.
leave it open because it's better for them than to lose a case, I guess, to leave it open.
Okay, that's that. And now that you say that, you remind me of something. Um, Germany only takes extradition requests seriously if there is an equivalent crime here in Germany.
Yeah.
Germany does not recognize these stings. You're talking about no victim. Germany is not going to be in any rush to extradite somebody for something that is obviously,
Government fabricated crime.
yeah, I'm trying not to say bullshit. I don't like to cuss, so I won't say bullshit. But that's
We
what it
cuss
is.
all the time.
I'm
Benny
trying
has
not to.
a Benny
I'm
has a
still a
question.
sailor, man.
We do it all the time.
Yeah, it's funny. I was a Navy Fleet Marine Corpsman. I joined the Navy, spent my 4 years with the Marines, and then 22 years of prison. I can have a really foul mouth, so I have to
That's okay. We're used to it.
guard it.
Don't be shy. Benny
Thank you.
has a question. I'll let him ask.
You might want to unmute yourself, Mr. Benny.
Yeah, I was trying to unmute you. I don't know if I can.
Oh,
Can you unmute yourself? There you go.
Or did I get it? Am I unmuted?
No,
Crap.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. You're good.
You're unmuted. Stop messing with them.
Sorry. My natural state is sarcasm. So
So I'm on federal supervised release right now, and I just recently, probably about 2 weeks ago, I asked my probation officer if I can get a passport, and she had to look into my case, and she said, yes, you can. And then she told me, but you're going to have to petition the court to leave the country, which, okay, that's fine. They're already going to know by the 21-day bull crap that you got to go through. So here in probably about another year, a little bit less, I'm going to request to get off supervised release. I'm kind of getting a run around with the public pretender's office, trying to get off it because I just had a couple small hiccups. No big deal. I didn't do 22 years in prison like you, thank God, but I did 72 months in a federal, and it wasn't easy. So I do have a foreign national wife. She's a Philippine national. She's getting ready to go to Hong Kong. And we're trying to find somewhere we can meet. We're thinking of Aruba and she's also looking at maybe getting over to Europe, and then I could go to Europe. She's going to try, and she has several certifications to the Philippine government, such as healthcare and housekeeping and yada, yada. So yeah, there is a way, but I know at least from what was told to me on the federal side is I have to petition a court, and of course that's going to drag in the U.S. Attorney's office, who's going to try and make me look like a freaking monster again, and go through all the trauma that I went through almost 10 years ago. So that's all I got to say, though.
I do have one question. We have several folks, including one of the leadership of our organization, who came to Europe so that he could be with his wife.
Right.
I would say at this point, almost half of our members have wives from outside the U.S. Let me ask you this. If I'm not asking anything I shouldn't, how long ago was your conviction?
I was I took my conviction started in October of 2015. It was part of the net nanny stings in Washington State.
Okay.
I was one of the lucky ones to get picked for federal. They got me to go across the Oregon border. They set it all up. I'd never been to this boat launch in a certain town. They had to literally give me directions and yada yada. So I'm almost at the 10-year mark for when I was sentenced.
Okay, and when does your supervision end?
It would be if I went to full 10 years, it would be July of 2031.
But you're petitioning to get off early.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I plan on probably this coming January, probably January of 2027.
Okay, yours is a situation I can use as an example to tell you this. In Germany, there is no such thing as a public registry. There is a criminal registry that the police have for anybody convicted of offense. It's not limited to sex offenders, but it is only available to the police. It is not available to prosecutors. It is not available to the general public. In order for prosecutors to get it, they have to petition the court and show good cause for it, because Germany is very strict on its privacy laws. If your conviction is petty, and I don't know if yours would count as petty because it's not a crime here in Europe, or not a crime here in Germany, so it might not even count as petty. But after 5 years, it doesn't count for anything. It's not counted against you. If it's most crimes, after 10 years, it is deleted from your criminal history. Hear my word, deleted. For all crimes after 20 years, it is deleted. So right now, we're talking 2026. Your offense is older than 11 years. It's definitely older than 10 years. I don't believe for one moment that that would count against you here in Germany. Not sure anybody would give a damn. However, you're on supervision. You're best to try to get off it a little early, but when your supervision ends, get on a plane, man. Get on a plane. And yes, your wife can come here and visit you. Yes.
And reside.
Oh yeah. If you get over here and get a residence permit, your wife can come join you.
What do you know about Croatia? That was one of the other places we looked at.
I don't have specific information on Croatia. I do know it's a place I desperately want to visit because, as I understand it, that's where Game of Thrones was filmed. But I've
My neighbors
not
went
had
there and they said it was beautiful there, and they speak a lot of English. And there's a
everyone.
lot of Filipinos that work there.
I have heard lots of good things, but I have not been there, so I cannot say personally.
Okay.
But worth investigating.
All right. Thank you for your time.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me, to be honest. Thank you for the invitation. Mr. Nick, I guess.
Good afternoon. Hey, Steve, you did a great presentation there. I'm in a
Thank you.
little bit of a quandary in my situation here. I haven't been sentenced yet. I'm going to find out my plea tomorrow. Actually, on Monday when I go to court, they're going to mitigate it or not. As of right now, the two things I got a question is, with a potential felony, can I still apply for a passport prior to sentencing?
Even after sentencing, you can apply for a passport.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Someone told me I couldn't apply for a passport while under a potential felony. Second of all,
I've never
my
heard
case
that.
is a little different. It's a sting operation. I've been able to mitigate it so far down. It's still going to be a felony. I still have to do 90 days in jail. but they're going to take away the child solicitation, but they're going to take away the sex offender registry. I'm going to have to move into the state of Illinois, make this work.
Okay.
But I'm going to have 2 years of probation. So what you were saying, that's what I want to make sure about that, is that don't even think about leaving the country until your probation is over, right?
That would be my recommendation, my strong recommendation. But first, may I ask, when was your conviction is possibly Monday, yes?
I'll be digging off for the plea, and then I got to decide probably in the next 30 days.
Okay, and you're looking at like 2 years paper?
2 years on probation, yes.
Okay, so if you had 2 years paper, the best thing you could do is not come over here yet. Just finish your court imposed sentence, because that will also show the German government that you can follow the law. You can be a law-abiding citizen. You successfully completed court imposed. Use those 2 years to learn the language wherever you're going. If you decide you're going to go to France, go learn French. Go spend those 2 years properly preparing to make the move.
Okay.
Then they're not lost. They're being productive.
Yeah, I spent some time in Germany. I was in the Air Force, so I spent some time in Germany. It's been a long time ago, about 20, 30 years ago. So that being said, my biggest concern is with this whole thing, since I live in a different state than Illinois, I live in Indiana. It's just what doesn't happen. I had to get another lawyer in Indiana.
Mhm.
Even though I get this off of not being on the registry. In Indiana, if I come back and live in Indiana, they're saying they're going to give me 25 years on the registry. So that's what I'm trying to circumvent, being on the registry. Because Indiana laws is a red state and it's a lot stricter than it is in Illinois since it's a blue state. And the city of Chicago is very, believe it or not, proactive in trying to help
Good.
second chance offenders. So
Good.
that being said, I'm trying to not register at all. Do my 2 years of probation in Illinois and then see where I'm at that moment in time.
Yeah.
And then potentially
Yeah.
go to Germany.
I know that I'm from Florida and I'm on a lifetime ban from possessing a gun. I'm on a lifetime ban from voting. Both of these are things I can do in Germany right now.
Oh,
Wow.
really? Okay.
So I'm not going, you couldn't get me to go back.
Okay.
Well, you
That's
moved
good.
on my screen. Hold on, you moved. Where did you move to? There
We're
you
going
are.
over. Yeah, someone else jumped on. Remember hearing my hand up? You see me first? Okay.
Yeah, you just moved. That's all. No big deal.
Okay.
But yeah, you
Yeah.
couldn't get me to go back. Couldn't do it.
All right. So I'm gonna see where I'm at in 2 years. That's good to have that understanding where you guys' the plan are and the potential help to
Mhm.
have a real life. Because it's been 9 months since I got arrested. I already feel like I'm in jail, even though I've been on my own recognizance.
Yeah,
It's
I
just
mean,
the stigma of how people look at you, you know.
it's silly because we all make mistakes, and I'm all for if somebody violates the law, you're held accountable, you receive the appropriate punishment, not something crazy. But when the punishment's over, it needs to be over, done. And it doesn't end in the US. It never ends. Even if your court imposed supervision ends, you have lifetime registry, or your conviction is on the internet for everybody to see. They don't do that
Mhm.
over here.
Yeah, that's
I'm not living
unfortunately my name's on all over the Chicago. I was on the Chicago news actually for this thing
Yeah,
operation.
it's
Yeah, so
yeah, you made your mistake in some form. I don't know what that mistake. And even if you're guilty as hell, even if you're guilty of exactly what they said you did, Nick, you shouldn't be punished the rest of your life. To hell with it. It doesn't take away your value as a human being. No, it doesn't. So, no, live your life to the absolute maximum. Learn, move on,
yeah, I agree. Thank
and
you for
help
your
your
time. I
fellow man
appreciate
if
your
you can.
presentation. You did a great job. Thank you.
Oh, you're very kind. Thank you. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? I don't see any hands. Do you?
Jeff has
Yes.
his hand up.
Oh, Jeff, sorry. Yes, go
Hey,
ahead.
good afternoon. I'm sorry. I hate to be violent. I hate to feel like I'm monopolizing this. I got to make a comment first. I've been in recovery for 20 years, and one of the big things I learned is exactly what River said. The problem is not everybody else. It's me. And as long as I focus on everything outside and try to control everything outside, I'm ignoring what's going on inside.
Mhm.
So the United States might be all messed up. That's fine. I made a mistake. I'm paying the consequences. Now I have a choice. I can choose to stay and be pissed off and angry and be all wound up all day long, or I can choose to try something different. And I can go to another country where I don't perceive that I'm going to be looked down at. I don't even consider I'm looked down in the United States because I don't give a shit about what happens in the United States. I am who I am. You see what I'm saying? So I see a lot of comments and people blaming everybody else. At some point, folks, we all have to grow up and take responsibility for our actions, and then we have a choice. And that's exactly what River did. The question I have, River, I got 3 friends. I've been in recovery, like I mentioned. One friend did time for child pornography, federal. He's been in the registry. I think he's a tier 1. He's up to actually be off the registry. He's going to petition for that. I got another friend who, unfortunately, didn't learn this lesson. He's in North Carolina. He's a tier 1. He second time in prison. He's got 15 years on a monitor now. And the third guy, he just got sentenced to 10 years federal probation. I mean, to 10 years federal time with probation afterwards. And his was a sting. What can I give these guys? What can I tell these guys to give them hope? Other than, obviously, I mean, we deal in hope. That's what we hope. That's what we deal with.
I could not agree with you more with what you said. You're right. A lot of people look for excuses. I did not do everything that my victim accused me of doing, but I did some of it.
Mm-hmm.
I did. And I agree with you. One of the best days of my life is when I finally accepted responsibility and realized that I get to determine my future. I get to have some control over what happens. It's not other people, it's me. Could not agree with you more. Let me first say the one who's got the CP conviction. Europe has a very different perspective on CP than the United States does. It is not, I hate to say this publicly, but it's not considered a serious crime here. Most convictions, especially if it's a first-time conviction, will end up in a civil fine. It's basically treated like a misdemeanor. Now, Germany divides pornography into 3 different categories. There's child pornography, which is prepubescent. There is youth pornography, which under certain circumstances is legal. I'm not going to get into the specifics because it's irrelevant and we just need to avoid it completely. And then there's adult pornography nobody gives a damn about. But that is not considered a bar to coming to Europe. That is not. That is not. We have quite a few people in our organization who have had those charges and are now living happily in Europe. That is not the end all be all. It is not. Someone who has you said twice convicted, moving on to the next guy. I'm assuming it was a man. That's a tougher situation because being a realist, that might be a problem for coming over here. Europe wants to see that you rehabilitated. But if someone's convicted 2 times separately, you got to wonder if the guy learned his lesson or not the first time. You got to wonder the second time. We do have one case. I know he was convicted at least 2 separate times for kidnapping and sexually assaulting teenagers, and Germany asked him to leave. If I remember correctly, our system administrator might correct me on that one. I think he was asked to leave. Either way, he wasn't going to get a permit to stay because after 2 separate convictions, including kidnapping on both counts, it's hard to say that somebody like that's not a threat to the German society. It's hard to say. I'm being a realist. I said earlier that not everybody can be helped. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. So on that one, child pornography, Germany will work with that. That's not an issue. 2-time conviction with kidnapping, I don't know. I don't know. He's better to speak with a lawyer than to me. And while I'm trained in the law, I'm not trained in German immigration law when it comes to that. I'm not. The gentleman who's got 10-year Fed, you said it was in a sting. I'm assuming we're talking about a cage type sting where it was online with a non-existent victim. I don't see an issue. Obviously, he's gonna have to finish his 10-year Feds. That's his only conviction, the only time he's been in trouble. So, okay, so when his 10 years are up, he's already passed what Germany considers to be the threshold. He's fine. Do you have any idea how long his probation is?
I want to say 5 years.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't see that as impossible at all. So the first and the third, I don't really see much of an issue. Obviously, I'm not speaking for the German government or any other government in Europe, but I don't see an issue. I'm looking at my members, the members of our organization that are here right now, and I'm seeing, well, I'm thinking of people. We've got at least 3 people in here with crimes much worse than what you're talking about, who are now living here in Europe.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. You're welcome. I hope I gave some hope. I'm sorry I couldn't give it completely.
Oh, absolutely. Truth is always hope.
I try to stick with the truth. It keeps me out of trouble.
And speaking about, being convicted more than once, I don't know of anybody in our group that has been, but we do listen to some court hearings about sting operation cases, and we heard one, I guess, in the last few months out of Washington. It was a federal case, and this man was convicted twice, and both times sting operation. Because it is so easy to be entrapped in one of these sting operations, because sometimes they will carry out the conversation for months, which is exactly what happened to him the second time. And the second time, he didn't show up to go meet them, and they still came and arrested him and charged him and convicted him. So I wouldn't say he didn't learn from the first time, because he didn't show up this time, and it was months.
Yeah.
Yet they still charged him and convicted him. But I would think, so, like you said, this isn't even a crime in Germany. So I would think, if both of his convictions are that, it should be fine, right?
Yeah, you're making me rethink that, because I agree with you that virtually anybody in your organization who's got a conviction, if it's one of these sting things, I don't think that's an issue here in Germany. I really don't. The gentleman I was speaking to, I think it was Jeff, was the guy who was convicted 2 times convicted of sting operations?
The guy who was convicted from North Carolina? No, he exposed himself publicly.
So he had actual victims? Oh, wait a minute,
Yes.
exposing himself?
Yes. Yeah.
I may take back what I said. I should have asked you what he was convicted for. Urinating, I'm just going to use urinating. Urinating in public in Germany is, I hate to say that's an everyday thing. It's an everyday,
It's a normal thing.
Nobody is going to jail for that. Nobody. So if we're talking about 2 times exposing himself for urinating, just as an example, I take back what I said. He won't have an issue getting in.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
He's
I hear twice,
he's going to be over the moon excited.
well, good. When I hear twice convicted, I'm sorry. I automatically think of kidnapping, sexual assault, sexual battery. I'm sorry. That was me
No worries.
jumping ahead. Forgive me. No, if we're talking about exposing himself twice, he needs to figure out how to close the door on the urinal.
Absolutely.
No, that's, I don't think that's it. No physical contact. No, I don't think that's much of an issue.
The
Yeah,
world
I
is
just-
full of you go find one.
Well, I mean, I live in a country where nudity is just, I mean, it just is.
Summer's coming.
Yeah.
In
So I just
fact,
wanted,
when I worked for KFC, when I was still the general manager for KFC, we had a fountain outside of the building where I worked. And in summer, it was so hot, there would be children playing naked in the fountain. Nobody thought anything of it. Nothing.
Why?
It's different here. Man, is it different.
it's the dirty Americans who can't handle it.
Well, I
Sorry.
was flying with my group in Bavaria 2 or 3 years ago. I don't remember. It was really hot, and some of the kids said, now these were teenagers, but they said, "Hey, let's go swimming. There's a lake at the end of the runway on one side." So I went down there and I took a bathing suit, and I ended up being the only one wearing a bathing suit, and I felt foolish. That would never happen in America. It's different. It's different here.
Well, there is a big difference between that and someone physically forcing themselves onto somebody.
Absolutely.
That's totally different. So that's why I felt the need to point out the difference between them. It made total sense when you said, yeah, like more than one conviction that shows they haven't learned their lesson. But there is a difference between, physically forcing yourself onto someone versus someone who did not do that. And there was a crime created around that, even like with CP, nobody forced themselves onto anybody. So yeah,
Yes,
so that makes sense. That's reasonable.
Thank you for pointing it out. I jumped to a conclusion I should not have.
Well, we think in sting operation terms, and that's why that stood out to me.
I'm used to dealing with ugly crimes.
That's why we're a good team here.
And that's what it's about right there.
We got it all covered.
Exactly.
I think, is Carrie trying to talk? We can't hear you. Carrie, are you trying to talk to us?
Maybe
Can you
type the
guys-
question.
Can you guys hear him?
I was able to hear small bits of what you're saying.
Maybe type it in the chat. I cannot make out what you're saying. Can you maybe type it in the chat? They said what?
Since I'm hearing multiple voices, it just sounds like he might have forgotten to mute his mic and he's having a conversation.
Well, I did.
Well, it's $10.
While we're waiting, can I ask Bert what he meant by "am I going to be live tomorrow"? Do you mean live in my organization's meeting?
Bert?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
sir. I'll be in tomorrow's meeting. Yes, sir.
So as I'm listening to this whole thing, one of my questions is, let's say somebody goes forward with it and they decide they want to become a citizen of Germany. Good, no. What is life like over there? Are you able to have property in your name to where you can start homesteading? Because when I think of my personal happiness, I'm thinking about being in the middle of nowhere, nobody's bothering me, I have my own property, something to that effect. Like, how expensive is property down there compared to the U.S.?
I'm not an expert in property. My understanding is property is harder to come by here in Europe. We have many more people than you do per square meter or per square kilometer. So it's probably more expensive, but I'm not sure. You asked about citizenship, so let me address that for a second. In our organization, which I don't even know how many people at this point we've helped. Probably more than 100 are now actively living in Europe. And of all the folks who've come over here, I am the only one so far eligible for applying for citizenship because I've been here long enough.
Okay.
I have already applied for citizenship, and the government told me that in May of this year, so about 60 days from now, I will get the answer. I don't believe that my criminal conviction was an issue, because I think if it was, they would have denied me long before now. So I'll post a video in about 60 days letting everybody know exactly how it worked. But so far, so good. I don't expect a problem. I hope that answered.
It did. I was just thinking about, quality of life versus Germany.
Quality of life?
Yeah.
Dude. The food is far better. The food quality here, the moment you go to KFC, for an example, you go to KFC here and eat a meal, it is a completely different quality because Germany or Europe has stricter regulations on steroids in the food and preservatives and this, that, and the other. We don't use corn syrup. When you eat chocolate or candy here, as I do too much of, it has real sugar in it. You will taste it. The food is significantly better. You will find that the healthcare system, we could talk for hours about the quality of healthcare here. Most of the equipment you use in hospitals in the US was built in Germany, designed and built here. But I go to a doctor. I've had surgery here in Europe. I had, what do they call it? Abdominal hernia surgery. And the only thing I had to pay for was the 3 nights that I slept in the hospital. I had to pay that out of my own pocket. And I don't know what that would cost in the US, but I had to pay 30 euro. I felt like I'd been robbed.
What's that in
30 euro. Sir?
What's 30 whatever
30 euro? Oh, I'm sorry. $40?
Wow.
$40, $45. That's what came out of my pocket.
Wow, man, that wouldn't even afford the ambulance bill.
In fact, I just had dental surgery 3 weeks ago. And the dentist apologized to me for it being so expensive. Dental surgery, I paid 160 euro.
Wow.
Dead serious, dead serious. In fact, the bill, I actually have the bill right here on my desk.
How long did it take for you to make that money?
To make that money? What? I don't understand.
Yeah, like I'm currency. So how long did it take for you to get the, was it 160?
160 euro?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, minimum wage is higher.
I mean,
there you go.
Yeah, I don't know how to answer that. In fact, I'll tell you one even funnier. At the moment, I'm unemployed. At the moment. Except I am. I pay, as every German does, into unemployment insurance. Okay? Right now on unemployment insurance, for the next 6 months, I will automatically receive at least 2,100 American dollars per month.
Okay.
I don't know how that works in the US. Yeah, I have to wait for additional schooling as a train driver. I have to wait until June. So at the moment, I'm unemployed, waiting for my schooling to start. Yeah, I'm getting the equivalent, roughly 2,000, 2,100 euro, dollars. I don't think in dollars anymore. Dollars per month. So you talk about standard of living. How do you even compare? Tomorrow, Monday, Monday is 2 days from now. Monday, I'm jumping in a private plane with my buddy Gus, and we're flying to the town of Nördlingen to go have coffee because that's just what we feel like doing on a Monday.
Wow.
I have one time a friend of mine, Andy, called me and said he was having a bad day at work. Could we meet for lunch? I said, sure. So I met him for lunch. We drove down to the airport, jumped in our plane, flew to the Alps in Austria for lunch. I'm not rich. I'm not rich. But this is how we live. I'm 1 hour less. I'm 45 minutes in the air from Switzerland to the south, France to the west, and about an hour from Austria to the east. How do I compare? How do I compare? Yes, the quality of life is better here, in my opinion. And I'm not rich. I'm not rich.
I think Misty has had her hand up for a while, and then Nick as well. I don't know if you just never put it down, Nick, or you put it back up.
I have a couple other questions that just popped in my head after I was done. This will be real quick, if you don't mind me going. I get VA disability, and sooner or later I'll get to the age of Social Security. How does that work when you live overseas? Do you still receive those benefits?
I think I missed a word. Did you say you're getting VA benefits?
Yes.
Okay, you do not lose VA benefits because they're earned. So it doesn't matter where in the world you live, they're earned. Also, you are entitled as a veteran to use the VA hospital anywhere in the world. So if you live, for instance, in Stuttgart, you can go to the VA. No, You're a convicted sex offender.
You can't get on base.
I'm not sure. I do know that there are doctors here in Germany that do accept VA benefits. So you don't necessarily have to go on base, but there are doctors here who specifically will accept those benefits. As for Social Security, I'm not an expert on that. My system administrator might have an answer to that. I'm not sure. Justin, do you have an answer?
For what, Social Security?
Social Security.
Yeah, that comes regardless.
Okay.
That's
So
yours. You earned it. Whether or not it actually exists when you try to claim it is another subject,
Yeah.
but you paid into it, it's yours, regardless of where
Okay.
you
All right. Thank you.
And your VA benefits, you do not lose.
Yeah, I'm on VA disability. I get about 40%. So
We've got people here. We've got
Okay.
folks here on VA benefits.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We got a
Misty?
question from Abby. Oh,
For the gentleman who was just speaking, the veteran, I'm retired
Yes.
military, and
Okay.
if you, I get retired, I get VA benefits as well. My health care is usually through the VA. There's a VA foreign FMB. Just ask anybody in Chat GPT or the VA. You can only get help from because we can't get on post, we can't get on base because we're registered sex offenders. You can only get VA healthcare for service-related disabilities through the VA overseas, and they do it like basic community care. You have to pay up front. You put in all of the paperwork, you get reimbursed. If you have TRICARE for life works the same way overseas.
Yeah.
All right.
No, thank you.
Does that help? Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you.
in the chat, we had a question.
Thank you.
In the chat, we had a question, I think, from Abby. And Abby
Did we hear it? I did see a question from Abby in the chat. Did you guys get that? I can't find it now. Let me
I don't know where to look.
It says, Stephen, how do the people in Germany feel about your crime? Do they see it as something bad but forgivable, or do they just not care at all?
Okay. For the record, I cannot remember the age of my victim. He was either 15 or 16, I don't remember. However, in Germany, that's legal. So for the most part, people just don't care. What happens is, so that you know, I don't drink a lot of alcohol, but when I do, I get funny, and I have a tendency to tell funny stories. And my fellow pilots, including the teenage student pilots, try to get me to drink on the weekends so that they can hear my prison stories. They love it. They love it. So no, I have faced no prejudice personally whatsoever. If anything, they're interested. They just find it interesting. And that includes policemen. I have flown with policemen who felt it was really interesting.
That's very interesting.
Well, German policemen, I did not mention this earlier, but German policemen know exactly what's going on in the United States. And they talk about it, from what I understand, I've known a few, and they talk about it in the academy of this is what you don't do. This is how not to
They
be.
use this as an example of how not to be. That's great.
I'm embarrassed to say that, but yes.
I think Misty, do you have a question? I saw your hand up and then it was down, and I see you back.
Yes. I was just wondering if Stephen, because I know the presentation told everybody a little bit about his story and what we're working towards, but I don't know if he said about what we're doing now, like our groups and how we can help now.
Say it, Misty. Say it. I forgot. I apologize to you because you even reminded me and I forgot to say it. So please do.
Well, first off, we do have meetings every Sunday that everybody gets together. We ask questions, we support each other. And starting tomorrow, we're starting a new meeting an hour before our usual meetings for friends and family to be a support system for them. So that way we can better support basically our registered sex offenders. And we have plenty of information on moving and what all you need to look at and think about when moving. We've got a lot of resources.
So to be clear, Missy, so this is a part of the same organization, but you're doing a separate meeting for the friends and families. Are you in Europe or are you in the US?
I am in Europe with my husband.
So this is a meet.
It is a brand new starting up the friends and family, and it is part of the Just Facts Not Fear organization. And anybody can join. They just have to go through the Patreon to join our meetings, and it's going to be an hour before every other week. And I'll be leading that and with the support of Stephen and some other board members.
Okay, so tell us about that. How do we join the Patreon and how much does that cost? How does that work?
I'll let Stephen filter that one.
Okay.
Misty
Thank
is
you.
taking over, or is really the impetus behind this program. We feel that most of us would be in a much worse pickle if our families were not there to support us, and our
For sure.
families went through this with us because it's not always about us. I mean, really, we have put our families through hell. Our friends, in my case, my partner, put them through hell, and they have their own needs. They need the ability to talk with other folks and vent. They need to talk about the issues in their lives. In some cases, their loved ones are still incarcerated, and they need to be able to pass information on to their loved ones because I think it was Jeff earlier that said we need to get hope to people. And a lot of the people in prison need to know there is a better future. It's not all doom and gloom. And so we want to be able to let friends and family talk among each other without having their loved ones listening in, because sometimes they're going to want to vent and say, my God, the stress from what I'm going through. And their loved ones don't need to hear that. And so Misty's going to be heading up that organization. As for how they get into the Patreon meeting, I have to defer to Justin. He has that information. I do not.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, if you can you send that to me like in writing so that I can forward it to my group? Like, just something like if you, how we would join this for those who are interested. Because we're not all tech savvy. So some of us need like instructions on this is where you go, this is where you click, this is how this works, this is what this means, this is how much it costs, and things like that. Like we need a breakdown of it, and that so that I can explain it to our members, because we have all ages and then we have all levels of understanding technology as well. I'm not tech savvy myself, so I usually just ask like, tell me how and where, and then I can do it, because a lot of times some of us just don't do it because we just don't know how. So if you can provide that to us, and then I asked also if she was in Europe or here, because she said those on the registry, and that's why I was like, oh, is this for the Americans, or so this is a part of your organization? So it's both, because technically those of you in Europe are not on the registry now, right? But would have been if you were here.
I mean, technically, I'm still on it.
Or unless you were in Florida, you're on there forever.
Yeah, exactly that, until I die. So yeah. Justin, do you want to tackle that, or?
Yeah, actually, Gus was kind enough to write the link several times in the chat for folks who were asking.
Okay.
It is patreon.com/a new beginning, and that's all one word, a new beginning.
Gus, can you email that to me?
No.
Yeah, there are several different tier support levels that people can sign up for. So all the information is there on the page. if they go there.
Okay. Okay, if you can email that information to me, and I will pass that on as well and sign up. But yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Just to give you a little background too, I lived in the US with a registered sex offender. I was with him through his conviction, his trial, and there really is no support there in the US for friends and family. And so this is something that's near and dear to my heart. Stephen's family was a great support for him when he was going through everything. So I got with him and we're doing this support group to help get the information out, hope. And also, so, I mean, my life was threatened when I was there in the US with my husband. So
I believe
it's
it.
a place that we can go and we can just, hey, you know, this is what happened to me, this is what I'm going through, and get other people's advice that's been through it. Or just vent, just a good support so that way we can get the stuff off of our chest so that way we're not as stressed about the issues and we can better support our registered sex offenders.
Yeah, and that's pretty much how we started as well, Kate, because it was initially it was the parents of some of these young guys that got caught up in this. And we came together and it was just informal and we would just communicate through email and through phone. And then we put together just an advocacy group and we figured we needed a name and should put together a website. But that's pretty much what our meetings were, or and pretty much still are. It's just about venting, but we have both the family members and the actual, you know, the men themselves, because these sting operations apparently don't go after women. They only go after men, because apparently our government thinks that only men commit sexual offenses, but that's a whole different story. Anyway, but yeah, that's how we started. We just recently became a nonprofit, so we're still, you know, really new as well. But yes, you're right. We definitely, I like that you do this separately for the family members, because we have, our group is mixed. We have both. And so when we have our meetings, we have both in there. But you're right. We see it differently, and especially like us females, we see it differently. Like I say a lot of things that the guys probably don't think about, but it's like, and they'll say, oh, I didn't think about it that way or see it that way. But that's good. I'm glad that you guys and you guys have really got it together, because you have a lot of members and your members show up and they're
Thank you.
Ours, a lot of ours are still kind of like don't want to be out there or seen, you know, because we do get targeted a lot. Like Norm and I, we get a lot of trolls that, you know, they do come after us and they say ugly things, and they think we should not be alive and things like that. So yeah, I believe you when you said that you had your life threatened, because we hear that stuff too. I just report them. Not that anything gets done, but I want it documented that that's what they do.
You know, before I bow out, I would like to say that one of the things that's happened in our group unintentionally, I believe that the sex offender registry is a joke. I think the American sex offender policy is a joke. And in our meetings on Sundays, we spend more time laughing, because that's, you know, in fact, somebody made the comment last week about where else can you go that a whole bunch of convicted sex offenders can get together and just laugh, because there's no judgment. Dude, life is too damn short.
We make a lot of jokes too, and that's why I said don't feel bad cursing, because we do all the time too, and you know, we don't hold back.
We're actually planning a stand-up comedy routine. Legit.
Yeah.
Because it's about time we laugh at the absurdity of it.
We are not a glum lot.
Yeah, my life's too damn short. I'm tired of being miserable. Done with it.
That phrase was penned 90 years ago by Bill Wilson.
What's that?
We are not a glum lot. That phrase was penned 90 years ago by Bill Wilson.
Yeah, I prefer to spend my days laughing. I've done the misery thing. It really wasn't that much fun. Really wasn't. So thank you again for the invitation. Thank you so much for letting us
Thank you guys so much for being here, and thank you for recording this for us. If you can provide that to me
Promise.
so that I can pass that on to our group for those who could not be here.
Promise.
And we look forward, and Gus, send me that information. And so then we get to attend your meetings on
Yeah.
Sundays if we join the Patreon, right? So I'll pass that
Yeah.
information on to.
Yeah, please do not be strangers. Feel free to reach out.
For sure.
Even by email. Please don't hesitate to reach out.
Even though we're in different time zones, that's okay. We're used to it. We'll make it work.
All right. Dann ich wünsche Ihnen einen schönen Abend noch und bis nächstes Mal.
All right.